You're listening to the Health Powered Productivity Podcast by RaderCo. I'm Marcey Rader, founder and chief productivity lead. This podcast aims to give you and your team bite-sized, time-saving, focus-boosting, health-improving tips you can implement right away. Welcome back to Reclaiming Your Workday, Navigating the Return to the Office. Our four-part series designed to help you navigate the return to the office with practical, sustainable productivity strategies. I'm Marcey Rader, and in this episode, we're shifting our focus to managers, how you can support your teams during this transition without micromanaging or overwhelming them with meetings. Now, earlier this year, I released Reclaim Your Workday, Sustainable Productivity Strategies for the New World of Work. And this book is structured into levels of tactical strategies for individuals, managers, and C-suite leaders. We're mirroring that format in this series. And today, we're going to focus on how managers can facilitate a seamless return to the office. If you are leading a team, you might be dealing with resistance to return to office policies. You may be dealing with balancing flexibility with performance and figuring out how to keep morale high while ensuring productivity. Shoot, you may be feeling some of this yourself, but as a leader, you can't show it. There is some good news though. You can create an effective transition strategy that works for both your company and your employees. Now, there are some big managerial challenges. Bringing employees back to the office isn't just about reopening desks. It's about reestablishing culture, engagement, focus. We worked so hard the last few years creating remote cultures, and now we have hybrid cultures or in-office cultures, and they can't be the same as before. And some of those people that have been in the office this whole time, they may be used to a little bit more quiet, and now all the remote people are going to be coming back in, and it's not going to be as peaceful as it was before. Now, here are some of the biggest mistakes that I have already seen managers making. 1, productivity paranoia. I talk about this in the book. Many leaders assume remote workers are less productive because they can't physically see them working. It's not always conscious either. It's just, we're not seeing them. And so tracking hours doesn't measure impact. We need to track output in the office the same way that we tracked when people were remote. Output. It's about what people are producing, not about how many hours it takes for them to produce it. Also, overloading with meetings. One of the most common mistakes in an office setting is assuming presence equals availability. Too many check-ins and status meetings leave no time for real work. And just because it's convenient to stop by someone's desk, don't do it without being thoughtful. They may be in the middle of deep work and you just stole 15 to 25 minutes of time for them to get back in their zone. And if you think that is a big number, well, it is, and it's right. Microsoft and the University of Michigan did one of the most famous studies that showed that when a person is in deep work mode, any interruption can take 15 to 25 minutes for them to get back into that mode. People that are remote have been used to fewer interruptions and having control over their attention. So this needs to be addressed as a team. How are we going to interrupt people? What's the protocol? And in the last episode, I talked about how in that maybe the first 30 minutes of the day or the first hour of the day, like being very thoughtful about what happens when a person walks into the office. Something else, rigid expectations versus structured flexibility. There can be structure flexibility, or a structure to flexibility. So some managers want a full return to pre-pandemic norms, but you're going to struggle with that because employees now expect flexibility, and we have to strike a balance. Maybe it's the hours that they work, or actually getting to leave at lunch to go to the gym or take a walk. They are not robots. They need time to recharge. And especially for introverts who have been having parties in their little brains all these last few years because they don't have to be part of, all the office goings on and things. They really may need to just be able to get out and take a walk or go somewhere quiet. They need to recharge their batteries. And then there's the invisibility penalty. And research shows that remote workers are promoted 31% less than in-office workers. And so how, as a manager, can you ensure fair visibility without requiring employees to be physically present? Because there are going to be some, like maybe you hired, maybe your office is in Raleigh, where I live, but because of the pandemic and your remote work policy, you hired somebody in Columbus, Ohio, last year. Well, they're not going to be back in the office, so some people will still be remote. And how are you going to ensure that they are still included? So some strategies to manage that transition effectively. First, think outcome over optics and shift from presence to performance. Micromanaging leads to burnout and resentment. And instead of focusing on whether someone is at their desk at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m., track outcomes, goals, and impact. And you want to define clear deliverables and what success looks like for that role, and implement quarterly reflection check-ins instead of daily status meetings, or maybe monthly check-ins. But we don't need daily status meetings anymore. If you used a project management system, which is the only way to get out of email hell, then you wouldn't need daily status check-ins. Maybe you wouldn't even need weekly status check-ins because you can just go to your project management system and see what people have done. But for the reflection check-ins, I mentioned several times in the book, the RaderCo Powered Path program is set up for employees and their managers to be able to keep track of all their wins, lessons earned, smartest decisions, all of those things to make it super easy peasy for everyone. You'll also want to train employees to track and report their key achievements proactively. And that's also where the Powered Path program puts the individual in control. And if you're interested in that program, it is you can find that at helloraderco.com/playbook. All right, the next thing are focus days and no meeting windows. So hybrid and in-office teams don't need meetings for everything. So introduce concepts like focus days. And these are company-wide, deep work days with minimal meetings. We call them design days. And in the book, I talk about how we implemented this at Blueprint Medicines, which is a company of over 600 people. We implemented this a few years ago. It has been wildly successful, and they offer 3 a year. And then RaderCo client Abdo, who I also feature in the book, and I thought they were just rocking it before. In the book, it talks about how they have 2 focus weeks each year with no meetings. 2 weeks, no meetings to focus on innovation and strategy and catching up and things. But when the book was released, I got the coolest message from Jana Cinnamon, who works at Abdo, and she said, guess what, Marcy? We now have 4 focus weeks a year. And talk about a happy dance in my little home office. That just makes me ecstatic for Abdo and its employees. that they realize what they can do with those weeks. And here's the other thing that they do, and I thought this was really interesting. Some people actually choose to take their vacations during their focus weeks because they don't feel like they're going to miss meetings and things. And I thought that was a really interesting concept too. So moving on, no meeting mornings. Block the first 2 hours of the day for uninterrupted work. And now I know if a company is global, this is almost meaningless. But companies that can do this, it can be productivity gold. And another company I feature in the book, Cook Wealth. So they are a local accounting and wealth firm. And I think they have about 30 employees now. And everybody's local that I know of. I don't think they have anybody outside of the Raleigh-Durham area. And, a company like that could easily say, the first, we don't have meetings until 10 or 9 or whatever that is. And then also think about shorter stand-ups. Instead of hour-long status updates, shift to 15-minute structured stand-up calls. And you could literally stand up, because what research has shown is that when people are standing in a meeting room, like when you huddle together and you're standing there, you're more like, you feel more of a sense of urgency, and you actually get the meeting done faster. Let's move on. Structured flexibility. What does that even mean, Marcy? It's your hybrid sweet spot. So you'll give employees some agency over their in-office days to prioritize collaboration. You'll also want to implement team sync-up days. When everyone comes together, it needs to be purposeful. And then also define remote work expectations. What needs to be done in person versus what can be done remotely if you are doing a hybrid office. And I talk about this in the book, that if you are the person that is working remote part of the time, then you want to do maybe your deep work tasks when you're at home, and know that the days that you're in the office that you're going to get more people interrupting you and things, and those need to be lighter duties. And then lastly, recognition and visibility. Employees fear they won't be seen or valued if they're not physically present. And so you want to track achievements, possibly publicly. Create an internal dashboard to highlight individual contributions. And this is your team. There's many different ways to do this, but that's something to consider. Celebrate wins equally. Ensure that your remote and in-office employees get the same recognition. And then also encourage team sharing. Regular show and tells for completed projects. And it could be that instead of people recognizing themselves, they need to recognize one person that helped them in the last 30 days, or one, who helped them the most in the last quarter. And that's actually a prompt in the Powered Path program, Reflections. It's we have a prompt for who I helped the most and a prompt for who helped me the most. Now, let's recap what you can implement this week. Shift from productivity paranoia to outcome-based tracking. Implement at least one focus day, what we call design days, or a no meeting window. Allow structured flexibility in hybrid work arrangements, and ensure remote employees receive equal recognition and visibility. As a manager, you set the tone for how well the transition will work. You don't need to force people back into their old routines. You need to create an environment where they can just soar. All right. Next week, we're going to take this conversation up a level, and how companies can rethink return to office strategies and how they can retain top talent. We'll break down what's working, what's failing, and how companies can make the return to office a long-term success. Thanks for listening to the Health Powered Productivity Podcast. If you found value, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a boost. Want to reclaim your time and energy? Grab my book, Reclaim Your Workday, at reclaimyourworkday.com. And for more productivity tips and to work with RaderCo, visit helloraderco.com.